Hey guys, how you doing? It's Mick Tully for World Martial Arts Television, and today we've had him on the show a few times, but I have to admit you shouldn't have favourites. You know, it's like when you talk to your godchildren or your grandchildren, you shouldn't have favourites. But guess what? Mahi is a favourite of mine because every time we chat, we put the world to rights. We talk a little bit about martial arts, and he's just great to chat to. But I'm going to give you your full official. This is now, from now on, Mahi, this is the intro I'm always going to use now. It's Mr. Mahipal Lunia Explorer in residence at the Immersion Foundation. That's the money shot right there, Will. Loop that up, brother. Okay, Mahi, great to see you. And we're going to jump straight in because I can't believe it, man. It's the 6th Immersion Symposium that you're doing now, right? So
6th public symposium, about 10 private ones.
Right. Well, I didn't know that. Right. Okay. Yeah. So quickly, because we live in the era of clickbait, and we've got to get these guys interested straight away. The symposium is 40 hours on the mat, deep dive, like a physical jump down a YouTube hole on a Friday night. This time,
starting Friday morning 6 a.m. and finishing Sunday night 10 p.m.
6 till 10 every day, right?
Yep, and all 3 days.
And that the topic now this year is,
I call it bikers, brawlers, and badasses. Fundamentally, what real world violence is like. You know, I always say, you know, a lot of martial artists think they're tough, but 99% of them haven't been in a real fight. And if you've been in a real fight, all your systems go out of the door. So we said, okay, if we are to look at this and you want to understand violence, you have to understand a couple of things. A, what's the mindset? And in the mindset, when I talk about mindset, I talk about 3 things: the ontology, the epistemology, and the theology. If you don't understand this, you won't ever understand what the mindset and what is the engine that drives that. The second is the physiology. How does this particular mindset move that very specific physiology? And third, the least important one, is the language, the shit talking. So if you look at most martial artists, they do it all backwards. They first learn how to shit talk, which they can't back with their skills. Then they try to move the body, and then finally learn how to move the mind. But if you want to be effective, you have to inverse that triangle. You got to know what you're fighting for, who you're fighting for. See, dying is easy shit. Any fucking idiot can die, right? Yeah. It's can you live? Can you survive? Can you survive suffering for those that you love? That's the difference that makes a difference. And that drives the body in a specific way, and that ultimately drives the language.
Well, you see, this is the thing, right? As always with you, like we said off camera, the thing is, this is a problem being a multi-layered individual, right? You look at something, you go, oh, this is going on. No, there's something else going on. And then there's another. Like Mahi, I've recently been thinking about you, not in a bad way, trust me, and not in a stalky way either. But I've been thinking about you as a person, because do you know what you actually remind me of? You're like the human equivalent of watching Inception. You know the movie? Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it's like, okay, there's a level. Oh no, there's another level. Then there's another level. And then the last thing, you know, I'm hanging out with some old Japanese dude at the end of the earth and go, let's go back and be young men together. If you haven't seen that movie, that is lost on you. But man, that's a fucking really good analogy for you, because there's so, like, once you think there's one level, there's another, right? And as I was looking at your symposium that's coming up, where you just talked about the triumvirate there, right? What I got from it as I was watching was, I watched that you're covering all bases, from 2 guys arguing over maybe road rage, to taking it all the way through to getting into a fight, to being incarcerated, to being able to survive incarceration, and to hopefully get out in one piece. When I looked at that, I don't know if I'm over analyzing it, but that looks like the timeline that you're actually creating over the 40 hours, right?
Yeah, and a little more. So I looked at violence. I said, okay, you know, what's worth suffering for? And what are you willing to do? So I said, okay, let's look at things from the 12th century to the 21st century. the guys who went on suicide missions and fight with the Indian arts. Most people have not heard much about the Indian arts, and I said it's time to open that up. So what are those battlefield arts like? What are some of the stories that, how does that happen? You know, how do 16,000 women smile at their husbands, do a Raj Tilak that says, go to war, you have nothing to come home for, and jump into a burning pyre so that the husbands know that, no, they don't have to compromise, and this is the last stand. And has remained one of the only kingdoms never conquered, never overrun by the Muslims, right?
Yeah.
Mewar, no one's heard of it. So that's one piece. The second are the Sikhs, the Sikh warriors. You had 5 of their 10 gurus. Some of them were boiled alive. Some of them were skinned alive. Some of them had their children buried alive in walls. And when they were asked, what are you fighting for? They said, for my mother, my motherland. Again, not conquered, right? Then you have the Gorkhas, you know, again, a very rich tradition. So India has been this a sense of sacrifice, a sense of stories that would make, like I told you privately, make 300 sound like kindergarten if you have the courage and the balls to stand up to it. Okay, so that's one piece. That's violence at its core. I mean, just put yourself in this. Imagine your wife and your little kid saying, Dad, you don't have to worry about us. We won't be around. Now go finish those guys.
Yeah.
And right in front of you, jump into the fire, and then you're going into war. So what's the mindset that's going on with that guy who's riding off on the horse? So that's piece A. Sorry.
Yeah, but you see, no, because we were talking off camera earlier before we did the interview, and you said it, and immediately I was like, I googled it, and I was like, 16,000 women in their bridal outfits, and they were like, we're not hostages, we're not bargaining chips. Go do the job.
The reason was when the Turkish and the Islamic invaders were invading India, that was the first time rape was introduced. There was no rape at the war field before that.
Right.
Okay. And the kings couldn't believe that the women were being raped. And the women were like, hey, forget raping me. We won't even allow you necrophilia. Forget necrophilia. You won't be even allowed to touch my shadow.
Wow.
Those are our women. Okay. And by the way, 16,000 was just that one. There were 12 such Johars.
Wow.
See, this is a thing that West doesn't know about, right? So, so that's just one aspect. So we are looking at war. That's number one. Number two is looking at the urban high crime areas. Indonesia, Philippines, Brazil. What does fighting there look like? Empty hand, single weapon, double weapon. Third, I call it guardians at the gate. These are the guys whose job it is to keep the bad guys in or out, depending on which side you are, right?
Yeah.
So I have guys like Rory Miller and Tom Sotis showing that. The fourth is what happens when bikers and bouncers get together. That's a very different kind of a violence, you know, and most people will never get to see it. And you shouldn't, hopefully. And then the last is if you're in prison. It comes in 3 stages. You have the bare knuckle boxes, which is the base. Then, as you heard Shadow talk about, you get into 52 blocks as a way to counter the boxers, and the way to counter the 52 blocks is the prison knife, right?
Yeah.
So the spectrum of violence is everywhere from the 12th century battlefield to the modern prison, FedMax prison, and things that happen. But I don't think anyone has examined violence this broadly and deeply as yet. That's what we're looking at.
Well, you see, it's that you just said 2 things there, right? Which normally, when it comes to martial arts, you don't hear broadly and deeply. So what you've got is the guy who knows a little bit, but then you know the guy who's a dweeb and he knows everything about one subject. And it's, you know, but my dear friend John Will always says you should look at it like a prospector. And he said, right, you need to go out and you need to survey all of the area and dig deep where you need to. But, you know, if you dig 15 wells, you're going to hit something. But you got to dig all 15 of them. And it's like, I watched a podcast with you, and we'll give him a shout out, Will, because cross-pollination's everything nowadays, right? So I watched your interview with Dean Franco, right? Dean, if you want to get some really good banter, come and see me. I'll do an interview with you, right? But anyway, that's my plug to get me on the show. But anyway,
I'll get you on it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And I actually really enjoy his shows. But the thing was, I've already heard you explain some things about this, and I'm still trying to process it, right? So we're just going to ask for a second now. I've asked you this before, but first of all, I wanted to know why you went into the symposiums, right? And now, why are you going from? We talked about, we were joking about it off camera, how you're seen as an academic by some guys and a brawler by others, right? And it's like, what drives you to go into especially this? Because if you went from a historical point of view and just took the safe and easy route of, say, 6 separate karatekas, you'll sell it out. People will come because people want that familiarity, right? So, and you've pushed it and pushed it and pushed it. And now this time, yeah, and there's a lot of preamble to this, but this is because it's you, Mahi. You pride yourself on being able to get 10 different disparate characters into a room who don't particularly like each other and work together. But this time, you know, we just interviewed Shadow, Professor Shadow, and what a cool guy. But I know for a fact that, and it's not because he's a badass, by the way, it's the fact because he's real. I know that him walking into a room with certain people that I know, they'd have to walk out of that room because he'd be able to smell their shit and he'd be able to smell their fear. And it's like, so why are you doing it this time with this sort of disparate types of people?
You want the truth?
Always the truth, Mahi. Our relationship is based on truth. What do you think this is? The internet? Yeah, we're real here.
I think there's so much bullshit on the internet and so much bullshit within martial arts, and especially within FMA and Jeet Kune Do, that it makes my toilet smell clean on a bad day. Okay?
Yes.
So that's the starting point. Now, look, I love JKD, I love Filipino martial arts, and I love all the other arts because I help move all of them along in my own stupid small way. But I think what has gone missing is an element of realism, right? There's too much hero worship. He said this, she said this. This master at the age of 32 was the grand poobah of everything, or that master at the age of 65 became so and so. No names. You guys plug in your favorite name. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Okay. But that was their truth. And at that point in time, in that evolution, what has happened since then? And it also was a limitation in terms of the access that they had. If you're only fighting your block, it's one story. What happens when you're fighting the world? And what happens when you get into an intergalactic fight? As an example, are you going to say, okay, I'm coming to you at Shotokan JKA karate rules, Mr. Alien. Let's see how it fares. I think you'll make a tasty little appetizer, right? So I think part of this is to see 3 things. Number 1, what's real and does your shit stand? Number 2, my life's goal is to create martial comprehensivists. I don't want specialists. Like Heinlein said, specialization is for insects. I'm trying to be human, right?
Yeah.
So I want to be a comprehensivist, right? And then number 3, it comes down to what are the further reaches of the human psyche and mind? What is it that you can withstand? If you don't know what you can withstand, you won't ever try. I mean, think about that example of the Johar. Have you heard anything like that before? And yet you've never heard this story where 16,000 women walking into a burning pyre and the husband saying, okay, they will not rule my country. You talk about 300. That's okay, 300 guys. What about 21 guys keeping 10,000 guys at bay for 1.5 days in the Battle of Sarahi? The only time that your parliament stood up 2 minutes in silence for soldiers who were not from their country.
Wow.
That's the Battle of Sarahi, September 12th, 1897. 21 guys kept
Well,
12,000 Afghans at bay.
Well, you see,
right?
but Mahi, this is the thing, right? So, from speaking to you, again, I everything you said when you were saying, you mentioned realism. I mentioned to you off camera. I've been arguing with a couple of original JKD guys, just for the simple reason that the guys. Let me just put my glasses on so I look more studious when I say this. Right. So there's members of that community that I respect because they turn around. I'll name straight away. So Taki and Andy Kimura, yeah, Jesse Glover, guys like that who were there, and they turned around and they went, "This is what I was taught," and they turn around and they say nothing but, "I'm a custodian of this art. This is the time period that we did," and you look at them and you go, "Well, that's real. It's not for me." So I think I couldn't spend my life doing that. That's like reading the same book, as far as I'm concerned. But some people dig that. I think that's cool. But they never pretended that they're anything that they're not. And then I look at Bruce Lee and I look at it and think, well, he'd have been doing jiu-jitsu now. He'd be doing firearms. He'd be doing this. He'd be doing this, doing this. And then I'm arguing with some guy who can't throw a punch, couldn't win an argument, let alone a fight. And then they're saying, "Oh, but if I met you in reality, I'd kick you in the nuts and poke you in the eye." And I'm like, I've been kicked in the nut and poked in the eye, and I've still knocked the fuck out of the guy. So do you know what? Sorry, I don't think yours works. You know what I mean?
I've had a lot of those characters, and they say things to me like that, and I say, "Ah, you forgot about my AR-15. What makes you think you're getting that close?"
Yeah. Again, it's so funny. It's so funny you said it, because it's we could spend the whole hour just shit talking about people on the internet easily.
No,
but
I get it. I think I think as long as you're honest that I'm studying this time period piece, that's fine. Yeah. But you can't sell that time period thing as the truth for everybody.
It's certainly not. You see, this is the thing. It was like, as I said, by speaking to you, I started looking into, like, and I love history, but India, it's really funny because it's like when you mentioned a few things to me in the past, I've gone and looked at it and I went, right, okay, so first of all, already had a few problems in India before the British got there, right? And then you look at who you border onto, like maniacs on all sides, right? Built an empire, kept an empire. And then if we turn around now and say, and this is like, that India needs a good PR program, because guess what? When I think of India now, do you know who I think of? The great Gamu, right? That fucking killer wrestler, massive neck on him. Or what's that martial art that they have where they got the knuckle duster and they do jiu-jitsu in it, right?
Vajramushti, yeah.
John Will, my good friend John Will, he was on about that as well. And I'm like, that's who I should be believing in. Now, I've got good friends of mine, Indians, they're Sikhs. I've got Sikh friends, Hindu friends, Muslim friends, like cool guys. And then if we turn around and say, so tell me about, what would you say the stereotypical Indian would be? And they tell, and do you know who it will be? Either M. Night Shyamalan, bad movie, or guess who? Just a very polite, unobtrusive, apologetic man. And it's like, how have they managed to like homogenize and distill a whole country into that? Now, and I know we're going off on attack here, but I wanted to ask you this.
I mean, it's part of the old culture. I'll introduce you to a term called Sanatan.
I'm Irish, by the way, so you can blame the rest of them, man. I'm in the same boat as you, brother. Sorry about that, Will.
I have no particular love for anything British, and the way I see it, 2 of my countries kicked Britain out, so I'm proud, So anyway, jokes aside.
No, but the reason I've said all of that is I'm going to bring this round to what I was actually talking about. So the victor rewrites history is what I'm going to say. So right now, I'm getting into an argument. I'm getting into an argument with a guy who's trying to downplay how much Danilo Santo had to do with Jeet Kune Do, because he's able to, because Danilo Santo won't argue back. Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
thing that I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I get it. So part of India, right? What a term that most people haven't heard is Sanatan Dharma. Sanatan Dharma means the eternal laws of nature. So this is following the laws of nature. So you've heard the Chinese counterpart, the Book of Changes in Taoism. This is the
Yeah.
old Indian way, right? So part of it is there's no point arguing with a fool because he'll beat you with experience and you'll be the one who gets mad, right? So second, why are they so polite? Ah, there's nothing to prove. Number three, most Westerners live just in a linear time frame. That is, this is the life, and you're always living under a fear of missing out. Okay, so it's grab, grab, grab. Indians think in terms of circular time, and for me, 10,000 years is around the corner.
Wow.
Okay. My ancestral home is 800 years old. Okay, so it's not so the way we experience time, the way we see things, the fact that this is not the only life I'm going to live, I'm going to come back again and again. So the idea of karma and consequences is real. So we understand that, if at least the way, so that's where the mindset is important. So for us, if I am an asshole, then I have to also play the other role where I am on the receiving end of that, right? Because
Right.
anything that you do, you bear the consequences of it. So you see that as politeness. So it does come across. And then, here in the US, I'm either an engineer or I run a 7-Eleven. I've had people come to my dojo and ask me, oh, where's the instructor?
No way.
And then I say, oh,
Really?
just wait. I say, just wait. He'll be back. He'll be here soon. And, and then they're shocked to see an Indian guy teach. So, I think part of it is India's fault and part of it is the West's fault, because I hold both these places in my heart. India's fault is that it hasn't stood up and hasn't had ambassadors stand up and talk about her arts and things like that. And that's one of the things I want to change. And it's the West's fault because I think we've become intellectually lazy.
Yeah.
People don't study the classics. They don't actually study history. They don't go seek out what happened to the Renaissance ideal, what happened to the educated 56 founders of this country who wrote such classics and wrote things such as the Bill of Rights, who wrote such things as our Constitution. What happened to those founding fathers who brought the Magna Carta into being? Now, sadly, most of these modern kids don't even know what I'm referring to, leave alone speak Latin or write Latin or Sanskrit. So I think when the language goes, when history goes, a part of who we are goes. And what a lot of the colonizing forces have done through history, the things that they destroy first is the education system. And along with the education system, they also ban the weapons within that region, because that's how you get to rule them. And then the next piece is you bring in the idea of guilt and self-hate into the people. And that's how you destroy them. Now you don't have to fight them, you just rule them.
Well, you see, this is the thing, right? So, especially I'm approaching this because of your experience, right? So, can you explain to me the Indian connection with Indonesian arts? Like, so that,
You just want me
like,
to get more love mail,
oh
right?
no, it's no, because do you know what the thing is? The minute you said this, I heard you say it in another interview, and the minute you said this, I was like, shit, I never saw that. That is the truth. So expand, please.
Actually, all of Southeast Asia, right? Because the borders have been so porous, right? So there were two. So from the about 6th century, for example, the first king of Cambodia was an Indian trader from Orissa.
Right.
You didn't know that, did you?
No.
So that's why the roots of Hinduism and Buddhism are so deep there, number one. Number two, when Buddhism started to spread, they went to China and everywhere else, but it also went into Burma, Thailand, and Cambodia via the land route. So those became the Buddhist countries.
Right.
From the Southern Empire, the Vijayanagara Empire, the Cholas, the Pallavas, from the 8th century all the way through the 14th, 15th century, they were a maritime empire. They conquered all the islands. going all the way into Indonesia. I mean, there's a reason it's called Indonesia, India, Nesia Islands of India,
Right.
right? And so the thing about the Indian cultures is that it was syncretic. So wherever they went, they married the princesses, and they gave their own daughters to the princes. So that's why you find almost 1/6 of the DNA being Indian even today. There's a deep language which is all Indian. Like, for example, guru. That's an Indian word. Indonesian arts, Mahaguru, the great teacher. Maha is a Sanskrit word. The national emblem of Indonesia is the Garuda, the vehicle of Lord Vishnu.
Yeah.
The national story is Ram Leela, the story of Ramayana. So the cultures are very deeply entrenched. Some of the oldest tantric temples are in Java and Sumatra, right?
Wow.
The Angkor Wat is, again, that's Indian influence. So I think also with the Southeast Asian cultures, as with a lot of Asian cultures, there's a lot of self-hatred that has come in. And that gives rise to two things. One is extreme nationalism, that everything is mine and it came from here, here, here. That's one. And then the second is always looking for a European connection. FMA, it's destreza. This is Dutch. But they like, okay, they hardly were there for 100, 150 years. It's a speck of time. What about the 4 to 6 centuries you were ruled by the Majapahit Empire, the Sri Vijaya Empire, the Odisha Empire, the fact that the first king of Cambodia was an Indian trader, right? So when you start looking at Litwa, you start looking at Bando, you start looking at some of the Bakator pieces, you start seeing all the animal forms and even things being called, this is the Hanuman, Sri Hanuman's dance, this is the flying Rama. Okay, it's all India, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know why they find it so hard to just admit it. And it's not about hey, this is the root, this is the mother root of all of it. No, far from it. It was very syncretic. So that's the piece, right? Because at one time, what is called Akhand Bharat. Akhand Bharat means the undivided India. It started on the borders of Iran, included Afghanistan, Pakistan, and went down all to Indonesia. So here's another story. There was a great Indian king in the seventh, I believe it was the 7th century. I have to get my dates right. 8th century, sorry, 8th century, Rana Sanga, again, from my part of the world in Rajasthan. The Muslims attacked. So this guy, he was paralyzed in one leg. He had one hand cut off, and he was blind in the one eye. Rana Sanga.
Right.
He chased these guys from Rajasthan. So you have Rajasthan, then Pakistan, and then Iran. From Rajasthan, he chased them, hunted them down all the way to Iran and conquered it. Okay?
Wow.
And then set up outposts, Rajput outposts at every 100 kilometers. After that, there was no Islamic invasion of India all the way till 1100s.
Wow. Well, you see, just as you're saying this is the thing, right? You're saying to the 1100s. From a European mindset, you go, oh, that was a long time ago. And then you realize.
On the corner.
Yeah, yesterday. Yeah, it's bizarre. So
So let me give you another example, right?
Yeah.
So when we think about history, so far, it's a very European-centric history, but that's flawed. The oldest civilization in the world, known civilization in the world, is the Indus Valley civilization, Indian civilization. So why the fuck do I need somebody who came way later telling me what my civilization was? Number one. Okay. Number two, for example, recently in the Indus Valley, they found about 1,800 sites that they're going to excavate. But all these predate 10,000 years. But that goes against the so-called idea of Western history. So now you have three terms: history, which means everything that was written and recorded. Then you have proto-history, where there are things that were written, but we don't know the language anymore, Sumerian, Bahmani, and everything else. And then you have prehistory, which is oral traditions. Now, there are things in our prehistory from the Mahabharata, for example, they're saying, oh, it's just an epic. But the way the epic has described places, those places have actually been discovered, including an entire underground city in Dwarka. So,
well, you see,
so,
it's Mahi, you're saying this, it's like at the moment, and again, most of my friends do martial arts. So most of the people that I'm discussing this with are martial artists as well. And they hate Graham Hancock. They hate him. You mentioned,
I'm not talking about Graham Hancock. He's a new guy.
Yeah, fingerprints of the gods, right? So he's the guy who turned around and said, if you look at the Sphinx, the problem is there's erosion on the Sphinx that meant that there had to be rainfall there. And he's now a heretic for just even saying, and he's not saying yes or no. So he's quite a champion for it. And then he also Göbekli Tepe, you know,
Göbekli Tepe in Turkey.
Yeah,
in 12,000 years old. Yes.
Yeah, and they're like, no, it can't be. And you're like, no, it is. And it's like, we have no idea.
Here's where I'm going with this, right? I understand that. I understand the objections and the heretics that come up. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in actual proof. So I'm looking at genetics, okay? Linguistic paleontology, the growth of languages.
Yeah.
And third, actual archaeological finds. Recently, about 12 bronze swords, still sharp, were unearthed in the Saraswati riverbed. This is approximately 5,000 BC. So,
wow.
So what do you think 12 fighting bronze swords were doing there? Oh, somebody just decided to build that shape? No. So fighting is as old as man itself, right? But I think the Abrahamic religious view of the world, this is why I said earlier on, you have to understand theology because it informs so much, right? The Abrahamic view of the world says that the world came into existence anywhere between 2,000 to 5,000 years, depending on who you speak to, right? They argue about it all over. I'm not interested in that. But what happened before that? So it's not willing to accept anything before that. I have my mind open to everything, right? If a time machine came up and they said, hey, you want to see how Homo sapiens and Neanderthals fought? I would say front row tickets, please.
Now, I know for a fact, Will Henshaw, if you would turn around and say, right, we're going to get the 10, we all know now, 10 hominids, right? So 10 separate types of humans were on the planet all at the same time, and we won. We're the best that they had, right? I would love to have seen what these characters look like, and even more what they'd be like fighting. So if you don't mind, this is what's going to get me into the reason we even started talking about India in the first place. Is first time ever you're showcasing I'm right,
four different arts within 3 sessions. Yes.
So can you give us a quick overview? Can you give us an overview of what we're doing?
So number one, we'll show the most popular one, Kalari, but we are going to show the master's weapon, which is this 6.5 foot long flexible sword. So this is the whip swords. This is called the Urumi, right? So how that was used in battles to clear out formations. That's number one. Number two, with the Sikhs and the Sikh culture, right? Showing how they use sword and shield, right?
Yeah.
And these guys still wear a sword to this day, just like my Rajput Sikhs. I mean, despite the fact that you can't carry a weapon in India, nobody removes a sword from a Sikh or nobody removes a sword from a Rajput because he knows you go there, he's going to take your head off, try to touch the sword. Okay, so it's still a living tradition. So you'll see Gatka. Then third, I am showing a very peculiar form of fighting, two specific arts. How a scarf and a knife is used together, right? And in fact, the way this art moves is it's 3 weapons in every move. So see this move, right? Just that one move. Now, you may just see a blade going to the neck, but it actually begins with the elbow crashing into your jaw. The scarf is tied to my hand, so when the hand goes around, If you're moved, the scarf starts to crack you in. Then the blade goes underneath to make sure that the scarf is pulling you and locking you out. So every move has 3 weapons. Okay.
Yeah.
This is from the dacoits and the luteras and the thuggies and their arts, right? So shed some of the light on that. And then there's another art, a sub-art called bandesh. And what this is when you don't have a weapon and you need to feel the other opponent and figure out where they have weapons, how you move around their body, right? So this is sensitivity. It's a chi sao, but you're not standing still. You're moving all around the body to discover the weapon, and you have to draw the weapon out of his body.
Well, there's 2 things I need to ask you. First of all, is one of the arts that you actually you know, but you can't teach because you actually gave an oath to keep it in the family. So can you explain that? Because I've heard of this, but I've never heard anyone tell me this.
Early 1800s, the British shut down 77,000 gurukuls in India. With one stroke of a pen. The gurukuls were essentially the old training grounds in the old schools. The gurukuls would have anywhere from 200 to 20,000 students at a given time. So these were old schools. And here in the schools, the philosophy was to teach Shastra and Shastra. Shastra means knowledge from your books, and Shastra means knowledge from the books, and Shastra is the art of weapons. So you had to learn both. Now, see any Indian god, you always see the Indian god with books and weapons. You'll never see an Indian god without a weapon. Not one. Okay, so these two were always there together because they said, you need to have the right knowledge, and once you have the right knowledge, you need to have the courage to defend it. So these two were tied together. But when the Macloy Act was passed, all schools, all gurukuls were closed, and Montessori's came into being. And that was the eradication of that particular strand of teaching this together. So only the very privileged ones, right? If you're from a wealthy family, a royal family, they brought the gurus in and kept the gurus hidden from the Britishers. Right? And they continued to teach their kids. I was one of them. I learned it that way. Okay. So there they learned this properly. So now what happened is now you have to make sure that the government, the military, and the others don't find out you're learning these weapons.
Yeah.
So it was taken that, hey, you only teach family. So when I was taught, that was the oath I was given. And I'm going to keep that. I'm going to teach my daughters the arts, but I won't tie them to the oath. So they can choose to open it up to the world.
Okay. So the first of all, to give you word, that's an amazing thing, especially in today's society, right? Now, this is the other thing. I saw this again in an interview, and I loved the way that you explained it. And it was the connection between, you said it earlier where you said about the scarf, right? So some people would call a scarf a sarong, maybe. So what's the connection between Indian martial arts and the sarong?
So I don't know where it started, right? But the Indian word bandana means to tie up, right? And Indians would always have turbans and waistbands, and these were basically sarongs. So the entire arts developed around it, right? So bandana became bandana, and then fighting with a bandana or a sarong, right? But the pieces that I have not seen anywhere else other than the ravines and the mountainous regions of India is that the scarf is actually tied to your hand.
Yeah.
Right. The reason it's tied to your wrist, so one is tied to your wrist, and you have a ball on the other end, which is basically a handful of coins that are tied together. So it becomes a club. Right. The reason it's tied that way is I can go into my strangulation whenever I need to, but both my hands are free to feel, because the highest number of nerve centers are in my hands for me to feel and sense, and for me to also grab other weapons. So you're far away, I club you. You start coming close, I wrap your neck with it. Because remember, it's a heavy weight, it'll wrap around you. Then I start to strangulate you. You start giving me trouble, the knife comes out and stabs you, all in one move.
You see, it was sort of the same thing when you explained, and I'd never heard. You said again. Every time we talk, you give me stuff to think about, right? So today, just while we're talking now, where you were saying a sixth of all human DNA, Indian, right? And then you said in another interview about that language, that a sixth of your language comes from India. The etymology of the words come from India.
Yes.
And I was like, of course, because again, it's the Western mindset. It's like, I remember years ago training with Dan in Osanto, and he was talking about how the cradle of civilization, Iran, they understood the constellation, early medicine, agriculture, and it was like alchemist. And I was like, of course. And then me being me, I'm thinking, why did I think that we invented everything? And it's that whole, as we talked about earlier with Professor Shadow. So guys, if you haven't watched it, go and watch that one next, right? But the etymology of everything and the universality of everything is what as I'm getting older, this is what's blowing my mind now, because I'm thinking it's new stuff, and I went, no, it's just a different flavor. And but it is mad, because when I was younger, I couldn't see the commonalities, and that's going to bring me to like where I want to go with this. So the commonalities of your next symposium, what is it that people are going to find out that they understand they already know? And then what's the new stuff that they're going to learn? And by the way, I'm asking you these questions, Mahi, because I know for a fact you've been doing a load of interviews, and your usual questions are, where did you start? What's your favorite color?
That's boring. That's boring.
So I want stuff to make you think.
No, that's boring stuff. What I've done, it's useless. What's interesting is where we are going. Look, most of us have had limited training. And what I mean by limited training is a particular point of view, a philosophy that you like, you stick with it. You may go to some adjacent spaces, right? But most of us will not have the courage to go into a diametrically opposed point of view. God forbid a pure JKD concepts guy goes to a pure JKD Ted Wong guy for 2 years.
Definitely.
Right? So, but I think that's what is needed. So when we think about violence, nobody has a trademark or ownership of it. So, you know, there are a lot of knife cults that come up, you know, this particular brand, that particular brand, and everyone wants to be a gangster. Okay, you want to be a gangster, but how are you going to deal with a special forces guy whose job it is to put gangsters away? How are you going to deal with a guy, okay, Mr. Gangster, you have nothing to fight for. How are you going to deal with a guy like a Rajput who willingly puts his wife and children into a burning pyre and says goodbye, but they won't ever touch us, and I'll see you on the other side? How are you going to fight that guy? Right? How are you going to fight the guy who is a biker and is like, I don't give a shit. You don't tell me what to do. This is my hood. Number two, most of the guys are thinking of violence on one-on-one. But if you've ever been in any fight and you have friends, your friends jump in, otherwise they're not your friends.
Exactly right.
Right? So I think the goal here is not to show people, oh, you're so dumb or so stupid, but rather to become intelligent, to see, where is my game weak? What is the development that I may need? Or what are the set of attributes that I may say, hey, I need to work on this? Or, you know what? If I run into someone like Shadow, avoid. I don't want to go there. Or if I run into a biker, what should I be looking for? Maybe I don't want to engage. Even knowing where not to fight is a win.
Now that is profound. You see, this is the thing, right? As I said, I don't have to put you up, Mahi, because I actually do. I actually like you. I like our conversations. You're one of the only people that when I talk to always makes me think about what I've said and what I'm going to say the next time I see you, right? It's like our dear mutual friend Mark Stewart, right? It's that whole thing. It's like what I really like is the way that you approach martial arts, because you just said something there. If you look at me online, it's like, oh, Mick hates original JKD guys. No, it's just the fact that there's quite a few of you guys who are just delusional. There's quite a few guys who do concepts that I think are delusional too. It doesn't mean that I can dislike you that you do something differently. It's just be honest that you're doing it. That's the thing. This is, and I really mean this, because we're going to wrap up, because I want to give you the opportunity to explain, first of all, how to get onto the symposium, and first of all, and then more importantly than that, I'm going to do this, and not that my endorsement means anything, right? But as a breath of fresh air in the martial arts landscape now, and I know because I've heard you say something very similar to this, no one else is doing it. No one else has thought about doing it. And it's that thing where it's like, but we've got way more in common than we haven't, right? How about we just hang out with each other, see if we actually enjoy each other's company. And at the end of the day, you're doing cool shit that you really enjoy with other people who 9 times out of 10 are pretty cool as well. That if I was going to have to give an endorsement, I'd be like, you're going to do 40 hours of cool shit, get your brain fried, hang out. And there's going to be, knowing you, Mahi, there'll be some questionable humor thrown around as well. Yeah, in that. But for people who want to get onto this, what do they have to do?
Just go apply online to at theimmersionlabs.com. That's an application process for a reason, right? I bring some very interesting characters in a room together, right? And I want to make sure that we all can get there, and we don't have to like each other, right? We don't even have to pretend to like each other, but you're coming into my house, so you're going to behave. Okay. And this sets the rules for how things will be run, because at the end of the day, very different characters, very different cultures, very different people. Prison culture is very different than the palace culture from India, but they're all in the same room together, right? So we have to have an agreed upon idea on what is allowed, what's not allowed, and make sure it's the right fit. Because at the end of the day, I rather not sell you that one ticket and ruin an experience for 25, 30 people. One of the big reasons all these people show up when I try to bring them on, even with people that they don't like, is because they know that it's drama free. You never see clips about bullshit coming out from my place. You don't see arguments. I don't market the stuff and it's done. It's done. It's over. Now it's useless. It's boring. Move on to the next piece. Right? That's because what's more important is who do you become in this pursuit, rather than resting on the laurels of what you've done or who your grand poobah was. But my grand poobah would kick your grand poobah's ass. Okay, great. But what are you going to do? You know, that's my question.
Mate, the fact that you use grand poobah, I absolutely, I just love it, because I see them all the time. It's a 32-year-old grandmaster, and you're like, dude, come on, mate. I've got geese now that are older than you. You know, please don't tell me. But it's crazy. But brother, I really mean this. As always, great chatting to you.
Can I just add one thing, one little thing? So
Knock it
this
out
time
of the
we are
park.
also, we're making one other change this time. Because last few times people said, "Hey, I wish this was closer to home and whatnot." I'm like, I'm not in the seminar business. I don't go around hosting seminars doing this. But what we are doing this time is, for the first time, we are also experimenting with live streaming this. So we'll have a limited number of live streaming of the entire event as well. So when you go into the application, you can say you want to be a part of the live streaming piece, right? So you might be living somewhere, I don't know, Timbuktu, and you're like, I don't have a flight or a visa. Hey, but write to me, and we'll try and make that happen. We'll try and make that happen for you as well. But the same rules apply, which means that makes no difference whether you're a virtual guest or an in-person guest. The same rules apply. Your belts, your ego, and your bullshit stays at the door. And then you come in, you explore what you want. And then when you leave, we'll return all of it with honor and with interest.
Do you know what? Didn't the guy once say empty your cup? I don't remember. I think that was an end to the. But Mahi, as always, pleasure, my friend. And you are
pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right, take care.
Thank you.
Bye bye. God bless. Bye bye.